Hey guys, the Jericho2 here for RunItOnce.com and welcome to episode number 2 of my mini course, 4betting Galore. So it's pretty obvious today we'll be working on 4betting. I'll try to explain to you why it's important with regards to the red line and just to improve your overall cold 4betting game. So let's get into it, shall we? First of all, what is cold 4betting? So I'll just give you a quick example for those who are not familiar with this. Cutoff opens to 2.5 big blinds, button 3 bets to 9 big blind, then the big blind 4 bets, cold 4 bets basically, to 23 big blind. It's called cold 4betting because big blind was not involved in the hand prior and not put any voluntary money in the pot. Basically, it's when you're raising after a 3-bet, but you're not the one who got 3-betted, right? So you were outside of the raiser and the 3-better. And cold 4betting, no limit hold'em, like especially as a bluff, I feel like it's still quite not used as much as it should be, especially in 2024. It's a huge show of strength that puts an immense amount of pressure on both the opener, on two people, both the opener and the 3-better. And I believe that it's just a great move overall. What will cold 4betting do? It will increase your red line winnings naturally, given how many folds one will get pre-flop or post-flop as well. So sometimes you cold 4-bet, then they call, but then there's always like post-flop where you can make them fold and flop on turn, depending on the flop and the positions and all of that. So there's a lot going on there for you. It's not just about pre-flop, like it translates to post-flop as well. It helps to balance the times that you do have premiums as well. So you're going to be pretty face up if you're only like cold 4-betting ace, king, and queen plus. So adding bluffs to your range will help you be not as face up as as one might be, and it does not require a ton of studying. It's really rare those spots in no limit hold'em that don't require a lot of studying, but this is one of them. So because pre-flop and post-flop are quite straightforward in this note. So pre-flop, you just kind of need to learn how the ranges, what you should be cold 4betting as a bluff and as value. And then like post-flop, the ranges are so small, and the SPR, the stack to pot ratio, is so small as well. Like there's not a lot of stack left, given how big the pot is, that there's not a lot to do to study. It's going to be a lot of betting small or even some jamming on the flop. And yeah, so I really like this spot for this reason, for those reasons, yeah. Let's talk about cold 4betting frequencies. Many new players or players that are getting used to a new stakes, they usually will shy away from cold 4betting. I've seen it many times. So when cold 4betting as a bluff at a new stake, when you're cold 4betting as a bluff at a new stake, it's kind of nerve-wracking and it's quite uncomfortable. It's more money. It's like, I'm doing this as a bluff. Nobody knows me. Yeah. However, it's a move that all great poker players use. Like every good reg will have cold 4-bet bluffs. So that's why it's so important to master. So many students that I have, sometimes they're struggling to have a win rate, and usually I'll have a look at their cold 4betting percentage, and I'll see it's around like 2.5%, which is super low. And whenever I look at the top players in my database, their cold 4betting percentage is always between 4 to 5%. And this is a huge difference because one player is just cold 4-bets the double or 2.5x of what the other players cold 4-betting. So the player that is not cold 4-betting enough is missing out on so much EV, so many spots that he should be taking down pre or post flop, and he's also, like I've mentioned, hindering himself when he has premiums, because people are going to be folding more if they see that he has a cold 4-bet of 2% instead of if he has a cold 4-bet that is normal of like 4.5%. Yeah, so this is what I want to try to shed light on today. In order to do so, let's have a look at my overall cold four betting percentage in my 500NL database. That has over 750k ends in there. So yeah, let's go have a look here. As you can see, I have in this database, I have way more hands than this at 500NL, but in this database, I have around 786k ends there. And this would be the cold four betting stat. 4.78% of cold four betting, which I think is a really good number. Got premiums, got bluffs, every position is covered. It's just really strong overall, in my opinion. And so, yeah, I would strive to get at least to 4.5 if I was a regular in some kind of small to mid stakes game. Just to be tougher to play against. At high stakes, I think this is between 4.5 and 5 is pretty good number to have. So we'll take a look at a few examples of cold four betting with charts. So now that we know that we often should be cold four betting, let's take a look at a few spots here that I have listed. So some are going to be a bit narrower in terms of ranges. Some are going to be a bit wider. So you can see like the UTG Open. This is already strong. Cutoff 3-bets and then small blind cold 4-bets. The ranges are going to be a bit tighter than the last spot, which is the widest spot, basically. Button open, small blind 3-bets, big blind cold 4-bets. So I will go in my server here. And we'll take a look at the first spot where UTG opens, cutoff 3-bets. So we can see cutoffs range here. Pretty standard cutoff 3-betting range and small blind cold 4-bets. We can see that small blind cold 4-betting range is, even though it's narrow, it's a lot wider than what population does. We can see that there's some ace 5s, there's some ace 4s. They're not full frequencies, don't get me wrong. Like, it's definitely not always. Like 27% of the ace 5s we can see here at the top or cold 4 betting. Only 9% of the ace 4. But there's still some ace 10s, some king 10s, king jacks, king queen suited. Funnily enough, ace king off is not always a cold 4 bet here. It really values the suited aspect of the hand, given, I guess, how often it goes post flop. And obviously you have queens through aces, but you also have 10s, 9s, 8s, 7s. 7-6 suited is in there, 3%. So even though it's a narrow range, there's still a lot that is getting cold 4-betted here, and I think most people are not doing this, might not even do jacks. They're not doing this, and they're not doing this too much. So yeah, we can see it, how much more we should be cold 4-betting here, and we're a lot of people are definitely like missing out on some combos. The next spot, MP cutoff big blind. So let's get into MP cutoff. So cutoff 3-betting range versus MP big blind. So we can see here a bit more frequencies with the better combos, ace king off, jacks is now full frequency 10, 9s and 8s have more frequencies. Ace jack suited is in there, half the time 48%, and then ace 5 goes up to like 32. Ace 4 still a bit in there. So yeah, just strong overall range. I'm definitely not. I proud myself in cold 4-betting a decent amount. I'm definitely not doing enough of those like 10s through 8s here. I'm not gonna lie. Even I think I need to cold 4-bet a little bit more, I think, than what I'm doing, because I'm missing out on a few combos. And the next spot would be cutoff button small blind. Okay, that's a really common spot as well. So the button here is going to be mixing obviously some flats and small blind cold 4-bet. We can see here that we have ace queen off now. We have the king jacks, the ace tens, the king tens. Tens is 3/4 of the time. Surprisingly enough, ace five is not more of a cold four, but now I guess it's because of the ranges. You kind of want him to have it so that he folds it some amount of the time, I guess, even though it's a pretty good bluffing hand. And you have your usual suspects here, nines, eights. But yeah, just overall decent board coverage here. And I think in those in those positions, people are getting more or less this range. I don't think they have eights that often and nines that often. King 10 and ace 10 too, but I think they'll have the ace queen off. They'll have the king jack suited. It gets easier the wider the range is in my opinion. So yeah, and the last spot, which will be the widest spot in No Limit Hold'em with regards to cold four betting. Button opens, small blind three bets, and then big blind cold four bets. So we can see now that nines are almost full frequency, 89%, ace queen off. Ace queen off is not full frequency. I'm surprised by this. This is probably the one spot where maybe people are cold forbidding a bit more. Because I think people are just gonna go like full frequency with ace queen off. But yeah, queen jack suited. I'm not doing it as often as I should. King 10 suited too. I don't think so. I'm definitely like missing out. Even I am. I guess I'm missing out on those two combos. Ace 10 suited. I think some people might be missing on those combos here, and even perhaps nines. But yeah, overall, on average, way more combos that are being cold forbidded that the population is used to. And so, like I said, even I pride myself in cold forbidding a lot. I'm missing out on a few combos, definitely. So yeah, this is definitely a spot where everybody can improve, in my opinion. And it's not so hard to improve at that. It's just look at the ranges, and then post-flop play, like I've mentioned, is kind of straightforward because of low SPR, because of how narrow the ranges are. So I think it's a really easy spot to get good at without much effort, if I were to phrase it in some way. And yeah, so cold four betting summary. So we saw that a couple of hands, a few hands that might not be natural for your average poker player to cold four bet. So as we saw, ace fives to ace fives, ace fours, the mid pocket pairs, the sevens through nines are definitely not standard. Ace 10 and king 10 suited, and ace queen off and queen jack suited in late position. So adding those bluff combos should ultimately increase your non-showdown winnings, red line, and result in an increase in win rate. So both because of pre-flop and also because of post-flop play, I think you will take down the pot a lot post-flop after cold four betting just by c-betting or just by jamming the turn or jamming the flop. So I think there's a lot to be made here with regards to red line. It does increase the overall variance of your game. I'm not gonna lie. You're gonna get it in spots where you're getting all in with top pair, the flatted aces. You get stacked, but that's part of the game. Or you flop a flush draw. You get in versus like an overpair. There's a lot of variance that will happen in those because of cold forbidding. It should increase your win rate with premium holdings, given that you're now wider preflop and people must defend wider versus you. So basically, it's like I've said, you balance your premiums with those bluffs, and it's very easy to play against someone who has a cold forbidding percentage of like 2%. You can just fold pretty much everything unless you're like deep, and when you're deep, it's really good because the other guy has a really big hand and you have good implied odds. But like, let's say you're playing 100 big blind poker, it makes life very easy for your opponent. So increasing your cold four betting percentage will kind of negate that advantage that your opponent would have if you were cold four betting at a lower rate. So this was episode number 2 for the mini course of Redline Mastery. I hope you guys enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.